The Honorable, oh, sorry. Good morning, the Honorable, the examiners, Ms. Henny, Ms. Mega, and Ms. Ika. My name is Maria Gracia Udiningrum. I'd like to thank you for the time and opportunity that have given to me so I can present my thesis entitled Similarities of Suffering Shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella. Chapter 1, Introduction. Background of the study. The first, in Grimm's Cinderella and Rapunzel, the collective unconscious show that love can be a resolution to complication. The second one, the themes of Grimm's Cinderella and Rapunzel are similar. Love can conquer all and help people to solve their problem and change someone's characters. The last one, the research focuses on the archetype and of Cinderella and Rapunzel. The current research focuses on how Grimm's Cinderella and Rapunzel are suffering in the story. Research question. In the study, the writer determined the research question is, what are the similarities of suffering shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella? Chapter 2, Review of Related Literature. The first one, Cosmona 2019, about the theme of suffering in the books of folk tales selected from the collection of the University Library in Brno. The second one, Tovadiev 2015, about the literature of suffering and resistant Derek Woman's testimonies on Black women's life narrative comparative study. Next, Robert 2017 about the identity formation through stories of suffering, a comparative textual analysis of the books of Job and the World Scroll. And next, Amal Nasser 2019 about the unavoidable suffering in selected literary texts, poems, and novels show that unavoidable suffering. And the last one, Fatima 2020 about the presence of masculinity on the prince character in fairy tale Rapunzel by the Brothers Grimm. Comparative study. Comparative study is a method that analyzes phenomena before grouping them to find points of differentiation and similarity by Mokhtarian for 2016. It is divided three types of comparative study. The first one, quantitative focuses on variables. The second one, qualitative focuses on cases. And the last one, policy focuses on collection. Next, suffering. Suffering is sometimes used in the narrow sense of physical pain, but also mental pain, such as feeling, emotion, or sensation. Many novelists and children literature writers who check the influence of suffering, the development of story. Children literature is most important. And the last one, literature is essential for a child's mental, psychologist, and social life by Munshi 1982. Chapter 3, Methodology, Objective Study. The first one, the direct speech and action of main character as the data. By focusing more on the direct speech and action towards and by the main characters, the characters traits were expected to be more distinct without interference from the narrator. Then a comparative study was conducted to compare the suffering in the two related stories by determining the differences or similarities. Approach of the study. The data will be analyzed by descriptive qualitative method with collecting data and comparative approach. The writer will use comparative approach. In this study, the writer will compare how the main characters of two books, Cinderella and Rapunzel, are suffering. The writer compares of the main characters because of the similarity of the plot. Both of the stories contain the main characters being tortured by an evil woman. Content analysis. After the writer gets the qualitative data, the writer will analyze this data to determine the causes and similarities of suffering shown in Cinderella and Rapunzel novels. Next will be chapter 4, analysis. Cinderella complication is her condition where she lives with her stepmother and stepsister that can be seen from the quotation. There are three quotations from Cinderella stories. Here's the first quotation, and I would like to read carefully. There she had to do hard work from morning till night, get up before daybreak, carry water, light fires, cook and wash. Besides this, the sister did her every imaginable injury. They mocked her and emptied her face and went into the ashes, so that she was forced to sit and pick them up again. In the evening, when she had to sleep by the fireside, the ashes, and as on that account she always looked dusty and dirty. From this quotation, the writer analyzes that the archetype in Cinderella get complication because of her condition when she lives with her stepmother and stepsister. Now we are going to Rapunzel quotation. Rapunzel has an archetype that faced adversity when she was 12 years old, when the enchantress looked her in a tower in the forest and she in the quotation. She was 12 years old. The enchantress shut her into tower lay in forest and had neither stairs nor door, but quiet at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down the hair to me. From the quotation, the writer finds an archetype in Rapunzel's harsh living condition when she lives in a tower that is located in the forest and has no stair or door, but has a small window at the top. Based on archetype, the Sam Thorman experience in both story describe how the condition of Rapunzel and Cinderella was so heartbreaking. In Cinderella, she is tormented when she has to live under pressure of her sister, while on Rapunzel, she had to experience the torment of life when she had to be on top of a tower in the forest. The lives of the two characters had to experience torture were also carried out by other parties. Complication in both also experienced the same heartbreaking. Cinderella's freedom to join the dance part, which has restricted by her family, also experienced by Rapunzel, whose freedom was limited the enchantress in saying the outside word. Next, the conclusion. Before I close my presentation about my thesis today, I would like to deliver some conclusion to my research. The similarities of two stories are they have the same characters type and themes, that the main characters of the two stories face harsh conditions. The themes of the two stories are the way to solve the problem by love. Next, the suggestion. The readers will be able to provide insight into the similarity of suffering in the story of Cinderella and Rapunzel by the Grimm's brothers, so as to increase understanding of the similarities that exist by exploring the archetype described. And next, to researchers can be a reference for future researchers in conducting research on the similarity of suffering in other stories and be able to become one of the contribution in research with the subject of the story by the Grimm's brothers. This are references. And next references. I think it's time for my presentation. I apologize to the mistake I did during the presentation. Thank you so much for the examiners and the advisor, particularly for your attention. Good morning.
Okay, thank you so much, Marcus, for your presentation. Now it's question and answer session. Ibu Henny, do you want to go first? Thank you.
Thank you, Wika. Can you hear me clearly? Sorry, am I audible? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So good morning, Maria Gracia. How should I call you?
Grace, Miss.
Siapa?
Grace.
Grace. Okay, Grace. All right, Grace. First, I'd like to congratulate you for your hard work. I'm sure that finishing this thesis requires hard work, okay, and time, of course. Now, I have some questions, Grace, related to your topic and related to your study and what you have written in your thesis. All right. First, Could you show me again the slide, please?
Okay, Miss. Wait a minute,
Yeah.
Miss.
Okay, so the title of your study, I believe that you are, in your study, you are comparing, or not really comparing, like to compare, contrast means that you see similarities and differences, but in your case, you analyze the similarities, is that right,
Yes, Miss.
Chris? Okay, so you analyze the similarities of the suffering experienced by Rapunzel and Cinderella. Okay. My first question is, why are you interested in analyzing the suffering aspect?
Okay, Miss Henny. Thank you for the question, and I will answer question. So I interest in suffering shown in Cinderella and Rapunzel because the previous studies have only stated about the meaning and characteristic of Cinderella and Rapunzel. That's it. Miss. Sorry, Miss Henny, I can hear you.
What is the rationale, your own reason? Why are you interested in studying suffering? Is it because other studies discussed about other things and then you pick this one, or what? Any particular reason?
Because both Cinderella and Rapunzel have similarities such as the harsh life condition, which suffering from the other bad characters in the story, Cinderella's stepmother and stepsister, and Rapunzel by evil woman. Besides that, the study is also supported by Grimm's fairy tale that has relation to the archetype.
Okay. Now, why Rapunzel and Cinderella? I mean, there are other fairy tales as well, right? That also portray the sufferings of the main characters.
Oh, okay. Okay, I will answer the question. Because the plots are similar, both of main characters have to pass the struggle to achieve a better life where the previous life were very difficult, caused by evil woman, stepmother, and stepsister. And the second, the cause why they life becomes so difficult are by bad women such as the evil woman, stepmother, and stepsister.
Okay. Now, can you stop share? Show me the second slide first, and then show me the second slide first, please.
Is it, Miss?
Yes. The research focused on the archetype of Cinderella and Rapunzel. The current research focused on how Grimm, Cinderella, and Rapunzel are suffering in the story. What do you mean by that statement? How Grimm, Cinderella, and Rapunzel are suffering in the story. So your focus is on the suffering
Yes,
and
Miss.
the archetype. What's your research question? Can you go to the research question, please?
Okay, Miss.
Yes. Yeah. So similarities of suffering shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella, is that right?
Yes, Miss.
Any So what's the archetype here? I mean, what do you mean by archetype in this case in your study?
Okay, Miss. The archetype in this study, I answer and wait a minute, Miss. Can you give me wait a minute to answer the question?
Yes, Grace. My question is just, what do you mean by archetype in your study? That one first.
Yes, Miss. The archetype is, I think,
How do you define archetype in your study, Grace? Did you define the term?
I define it.
Yes. So please, can you read the definition of the term?
Archetype is from Grimm's from books Grimm's Cinderella, page 106. In book Grimm's 93 define the archetype.
Could you stop sharing? I'd like to share my screen.
Okay, Miss.
Okay, Grace, do you see my screen?
Yes, Miss.
Yes. All right. Maybe I should make it a bit smaller. Okay. I have some questions there, but actually I'd like to continue with my question first on archetype. I'll help you by seeing the definition of terms here, because you define the term archetype here, right?
Yes, Miss.
Is that right? So this is what I mean. How do you define archetype in your study? So archetype in your study here is defined as the inborn models of people from the ancestors, which are universal, and it affects people's personality and influences their behavior. Could you explain further? Because I'm a bit lost here with the term.
Okay, Miss. I get. Archetype in my thesis.
Okay. Do you find it difficult to answer that one? I'll go back to that question again later when we discuss about the findings, okay? So, but please later on, make sure that you understand the term that you use, because you also mentioned in your presentation that archetype is one of the, that the focus of your study is archetype and probably the suffering. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let me start from my from the title here again. Let me go back to the title. Okay. I have asked the first question. Now, your title is Similarities of Suffering Shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella. To me, it is better to mention, so I guess because the word here is by Rapunzel and Cinderella, you are referring to the characters, right?
Yes.
Yes, but I think you need to mention as well in the title the literary works or the the fairy tales, the titles, rather than the characters. So even though they are the same, okay, I mean the names are the same, but I rather maybe my suggestion, you can talk to Bu Ika again later, but you can is it Grimm's Persians? Because there are different versions, probably Rapunzel and Cinderella. And you mentioned as well in the in your thesis that there are different versions, right? Is it right? Are you referring to the Grimm's version? Grimm's brothers versions of Rapunzel and Cinderella.
Referring version, I think it's not referring, Miss.
But you mentioned in your thesis that you are using that one, the Grimm brothers
Yes.
versions.
Yes,
Are you,
Miss.
which one that you, because like Rapunzel, if you go easy reference, you just go browse and find the story, then you will get the information that there are different versions, okay, of Rapunzel and Cinderella. Now the one Grimm brothers, they wrote it down. I mean, they wrote the stories, but actually there was a source as well mentioning that the stories were there already. So so it's like passed down, like and then the Grimm brothers then wrote that down, printed, I mean, and then published. Okay, so what I mean here is there might be a slight difference in the versions of Rapunzel and Cinderella. But my point is, I think you need to mention which versions that you use. Okay, so just mention in the title and along in chapter 3 as well, when you discuss about the literary works that you discuss, you need to refer to which versions. And if you, so this is my question, my note here is Grimm's Rapunzel and Cinderella. So like similarities of suffering shown in Grimm's Rapunzel and Cinderella. Probably that's what I thought. Okay, Grace. So maybe later you can talk to Bu Ika, because there might be, and if you just say Rapunzel and Cinderella, I know Cinderella, the play version written by PPE students many years ago. Okay, so so if you just mention Cinderella, then which one? Okay, which version that you refer, that you used in your study? So I guess you need to mention that. I'm not saying that you referring to the wrong ones, but I'm saying that you need to mention, okay, which versions that you use, so that when you refer to, because in the analysis you also quote, right? You cite the some lines from the stories, right? So from which source, from what's the reference of the stories that you analyze?
Okay,
Oh,
Miss.
Grace, can I ask, how did you get the stories? Did you download from the internet?
Download, Miss.
Yes.
Download from
Is that the, does it say something? I mean, the website for the fairy tales, does it say that it's Grimm's version or written by who?
Oh wait, Miss. I think in references. In references.
Yeah, I guess you can check again, Grace. Okay, to save time. Okay, so my point is you have to mention that. All right.
Yes, Miss.
Right. My next point is, let's go to the abstract. All right. Okay, there are some issues in grammar, but I will skip that one. You can check again later. I'll send the file to Bu Ika. Okay. Hang on. Okay, so in this part, your research question, only one research question, right? I think it is. I still think that it is necessary to mention the books. Okay, I mean the literary works. Like for instance, what similarities of suffering are shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella in Grimm's for instance. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And my next question is related to the archetype. Is it included in here? I mean, when you analyze the similarities of suffering, do you also analyze the archetype?
Not yet, Miss. Maybe I edit to revising.
Yeah, because when you see the when you analyze the similarities, then my expectation is similarities of suffering. So you only discuss about the sufferings, right? What sufferings, the similar sufferings experienced by Rapunzel and Cinderella. Is that right?
Yes, Miss.
Yes. Okay. So I have a question here related to the archetype because you mentioned that as well. Now let's see the answer to the findings here. Sorry. Hang on. Yeah. So the findings, if you check, similarity of the plot and the cause of suffering. Both stories contain the main character suffering because being tortured by an evil woman. Okay, please check again the language. Okay, so what can you say in a simple in a sentence or two, the similarity or similarities of suffering between the two?
Similarity suffering. Sorry, Miss.
Yes, can you say again in one sentence or two sentences the conclusion, the answer to the questions? What similarities of suffering are shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella?
Oh, okay. The similarities of suffering are shown by Rapunzel and Cinderella is the plot and the cause stories, and because being by an evil woman.
Once again, so first,
The first is the similarity of the plot and causes.
So the
And-
cause of suffering. So what similarities of suffering? The answer is the cause of suffering. Next.
This story was about a young girl with mother death and letters. And by an evil woman.
Could you explain again? Explain the findings of your study.
Wait a minute. Okay. The similarity of suffering from both stories is they suffered from the evil woman's stepsister and stepmother. Also the witch on the Rapunzel story. Then they also face harsh life. It is.
So basically, it's the cause of
Yes.
suffering. That's only that.
And the plot of the stories.
Is the plot related to suffering?
Yes, miss.
How?
Because when Rapunzel and Cinderella struggle to achieve better life.
Okay. Okay. I still need more explanation on that, but I'll go to my next question. If I still have time, do I still have time, Bu Ika?
It's okay, Bu Henny.
Okay, yeah, just maybe one or two more questions. Can you show me the slide on the, okay, hang on, let me, in here, you also mentioned about the comparative study, that your study is a comparative study, but I'm questioning this statement. The object being compared can be in the form of elements, figures of scholars, schools of thought, and the development of learning applications. What are you compared actually? What did you compare? What did you compare in your study?
I did compare to stories Cinderella and Rapunzel. And then,
yes, but you know, why did you mention this? The object being compared, the objects, okay, because comparing means more than one, can be in the form of elements, okay, figures of scholars, schools of thought. Now, in your study, you compare the main characters, but what is this? What I mean here is, I think in the abstract, you just need to mention the one that you compared in your study. I got a bit confused here because there is like figures of scholars and schools of thought and development of learning applications. Well, these are not the ones that you compare, right? It's okay to explain this as a part of the theory that you referred in Insight. I mean, in chapter 2, for example, but in the abstract, I think you just need to include or mention the things that you did in your research. So just maybe omit this sentence and then just highlight if you want to say the objects being compared in this study are what?
okay.
Okay. Now,
Yes.
I have another question related to the approach of the study, because in chapter 3, you did not mention actually the critical approach, right? So what you mentioned there is it is a descriptive qualitative method, and that it is a comparative, it's using comparative approach to, I guess, in the analysis, in analyzing the data. Is that right?
Yes, Miss.
Now, when we discuss literary analysis, usually we use some critical approaches or criticism. Are you aware of that? Are you familiar with the literary criticisms like biographical approach, psychological approach, or sociocultural, or post-colonial, or formalism, or feminism? There are different kinds of critical approaches. Usually when you analyze literary works, fairy tales are literary works, right? So usually you will mention, or you highlight the approach here referring to the criticism or the critical approach that you use. Please mention that. Not comparative, I tend to say that comparative is the approach in when you do the analysis, but it's not the approach in like critical approach that I meant. Okay, so please read again. Maybe you can discuss with Puika what's the best. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the conclusion. This is my last question. Conclusion in chapter 5. Right, let's go here. My first comment is you need an introductory paragraph here stating what the chapter is about. Okay, so before you go to subheading here, conclusions, you can add here an introductory paragraph. You ask to Ika, okay, later. Now here, seeing how the archetype can be concluded, similarity and suffering is how both of them experience suffering at young age. In addition, other suffering experienced by both of them is when their freedom is limited by the people around them. Okay, can you, I will stop sharing. I'd like you to show me the conclusion in your slide.
Sorry, Miss.
Can you switch to, yeah, okay. So the similarities of those stories are they have the same character types and themes, that the main characters of the two stories face harsh conditions. The theme of the two stories are the way to solve the problem by love. So I'm not sure that this is actually, are you saying the same thing as the ones that you wrote?
And this sorry, Miss, the one?
Yeah. Is the conclusion that you mentioned here the same as the one that you put in your thesis? So what's the conclusion again?
The conclusion, they have the same character types and themes that the main characters of the story, the true story, face harsh condition. and the themes of the two stories are the way to solve
Have the same character types. What kind of character types?
a character times like the struggle to achieve better life, Miss.
Okay. Okay. I think I have taken too much time. So I'll return this to Bu Ika. I might join the discussion later if I have the same question as Bu Mega, okay?
Thank you so much, Ibu Henny, for the questions, for the suggestion. Thank you. Okay, so Ibu Mega, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu Ika. Hello, Grace. How are you?
Miss.
Okay, so it's been a long time since we last met, yeah? I think the last time we met was in CRW class. It's in semester 3, yeah. All right, so actually, some of my questions are the same with Bu Henny. I'm also still wondering about the archetype first. Second one, I'm also still don't get the conclusion of your study. Okay, what are the results? Because between the abstract, your analysis in chapter 4 and the summary are not in line. Okay, you wrote ABC in the abstract, you wrote DEF in the analysis, and then in chapter 5 you wrote G and H. Okay, so they're not in line. Okay, so it gives us a little bit of confusion. Okay, what is actually the result of your study? So Grace, can you please close this screen?
Okay, Miss.
Okay. Now, with your own word, okay, with your own word, without having to read anything, okay, you're the one who did the study. So I believe that you can answer my question. What is actually the result of your study?
The result of the study, the similarities of this story are they have the same character types.
No, please don't read anything. It is something that you wrote, right, on your conclusion. But now, please talk to me like you're talking with a friend, okay? What is your thesis? What is it about? I want to know. Then how was the result? Can you please tell me what your thesis is about?
Okay.
Can you talk to me as a friend?
Yes.
Okay.
My result to my thesis depends in similarities of the stories. They have the same character types and themes that the main characters of the two stories face harsh condition, and the themes of the two stories are the way to solve the problems by love.
Yeah, that's exactly what you wrote on your conclusion. Okay, is that right?
Yes, Miss.
So now I don't want you to read that. I want you to tell me. Okay, to tell me with your own word. Okay, first, blah 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 blah. Second, this. Third, this. Okay, so you have read Rapunzel, and then apa tadi? Cinderella. Okay, and then you are trying to find the similarities of suffering. Okay, then can you tell me one more time the result, but not reading, yeah?
Okay. The first, my result similarities of the stories are they have same characters, Rapunzel and Cinderella, Cinderella types, and then the same themes of the main characters, like um, to achieve better life with the struggle in stories, and then uh, the the stories face harsh condition. The themes of the two stories are the way to solve the problem by love with uh, find a prince and to outside to go outside in the castles.
Where is the suffering part?
The suffering part is to similar situations such as hard conditions. As the every woman, their struggle, that is why the term called similar.
Sorry, what is the last one? The last sentence you mentioned?
Oh, okay. The suffering part is when the Rapunzel and Cinderella face the similar situation, such as hard condition, face the evil woman, their struggle that is why them they call similar.
Okay. All right. So let me open a whiteboard. Yeah. So you have already read Cinderella and Rapunzel, yeah? Right? Is that right?
Yes,
And then you said that both of them, Cinderella is suffering. Rapunzel is also suffering. And then you try to find similarities of the suffering, right? So what are the similarities of the suffering? First,
cause and the first is
cause of the suffering, like this,
yes,
which is
it's just the uh by to struggle the sorry miss to struggle the better life miss.
loh, katanya cause of the suffering. Apa itu
Iya,
cause? Cause itu kan penyebab. Penyebab sufferingnya apa?
penyebab sufferingnya an evil woman.
An evil woman in both of the characters.
Yes, miss.
Okay. And then apa lagi?
Uh,
The other similarities,
the plot of stories.
the plot of the stories. Is it related to suffering? Because your title is suffering.
Not yet miss.
Oke, berarti ini enggak. Jadi, so apalagi? What are the similarities?
The struggle.
The struggle. Oke, gimana struggle-nya? Can you explain?
When to get better, to achieve better life.
Oh, itu is that struggle or purpose?
Purpose.
Nah, oke. Nah, tapi kalau if purpose, the purpose is to get better life, is it suffering? How does it relate with the suffering?
Oh. In the struggle, miss.
This okay. The struggle the struggle to get better life. Now, can you explain what struggle did Cinderella face?
When Cinderella lives with her stepmother and stepsister and cannot to join the party, and Cinderella to find a prince. That's all.
The purpose is to struggle, the struggle to get better life, or to find a prince. Gimana? Which one? What?
The but of them is
Both of them.
yes.
How does it related with the suffering? Kan yang lagi difokuskan sufferingnya.
Sufferingnya di in plotnya, in the plot.
Can you explain that?
Okay. When the Cinderella Cinderella lives with her stepmother and then
Sama lagi dong. It's the same explanation like the previous one.
which
to achieve better life.
no. To wait a minute, miss.
What is meant by plot?
Sorry, miss.
What is the meaning of plot?
The meaning of plot is the event or the sequence of cause and effect.
The sequence of the stories.
Yes.
Okay, and then what are the similarities of Cinderella and Rapunzel, which relates to the suffering? Both of them.
Every woman.
No, that's number one. Tadi kan you are talking about the plot. We are already in number 3.
Oh, okay. When Cinderella in chapter 5, miss.
Yeah, can you explain? But not read. Explain.
Okay. The story began with a girl named Cinderella who became an orphan because her mother died, and his father has to marry a woman who already has 2 children to be a friend and comforter to his giving child. And his father had seen how the 2 children turned out to be completely lazy, did not want to work, and did not like cleaning the house, but the father had already fallen in love with his beautiful mother or stepmother.
That's Cinderella. What about Rapunzel?
The Rapunzel, when when to sorry, young girl of exquisite beauty who has been impersonated from birth by a cruel witch.
And then the similarities, because you're talking about similarities. So I want to see, for example, what is similarity between Miss Mega and Miss Ika, for example. So it's probably, oh, we both starting teaching in PBI in the same year, gitu kan? Berarti kan cari persamaannya kan?
Yes.
Bukan cari perbedaannya. So what you have already explained to me was the difference. Kalau Cinderella begini, kalau Rapunzel begini. Well, the title of your study is the similarities. So, the similarity is
when Cinderella and Rapunzel the stories that they have some characters, types, and themes.
balik lagi ke situ. Okay, thank you. Grace, I'm sorry, I have to stop here because the time is up. Okay, so well, you can see my comment in the file that I'm going to send you later. Okay, so I will give the time back to Bu Ika.
Thank you so much, Bu Mega, because you made it clear. Yeah. Okay. So Grace,